Can you see it now? Oh, wait a minute, hold on. I gotta wait for it to wind up.
Put fresh batteries in.
Okay, it should be live. Okay, can you see it? Oh, wait a minute, hold on. Oh, gotta wait for it to wind up.
Seems to be labeled test, but yes, I see it.
Okay. All right, 5-minute mark. What is that?
Two-minute warning. Is everybody ready? That means automatic timeout if there's an incomplete pass.
I think Tino needs to mute himself.
Tino's,
Yeah, I am muted. I'm just on two devices because my audio works better. So that's why you just see one.
yeah. He's muted, Commissioner Faraday.
Oh, I just hear somebody moving around in the background, so that's why I said that. Okay.
Is everybody ready? Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hereby call this remote meeting of the Washington Metrorail Safety Commission to order. This meeting is being recorded as well as streamed live for the public. Ms. Foltz, do we have a quorum today?
Yes, we do.
You need to take the roll, or you just see everybody present?
I think because we are meeting remotely, even though we can see everybody, I think it would be advisable to take the roll. So with that, I will call the roll to make sure that we have a quorum and the minutes will accurately reflect today's participants. Also would like to account for all alternates in the event any commissioner has connectivity issues or is not in attendance. An alternate will participate in the public meeting to reach a quorum if needed, and if one or both members from that jurisdiction are absent. So with that, when I call your name, please answer with present. Chairman Hart.
Present.
Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Present.
Commissioner Bob. I don't see him. Commissioner Farrar-Dyke.
Present.
Commissioner Hull.
Present.
Commissioner Rush.
Present.
And alternate Commissioner Lobby.
Present.
And because we have a quorum of members, the alternate will not need to act unless somebody just drops off. So Chairman Hart, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Foltz. We'll start today with our safety message from the Metrorail Safety Commission's Emergency Management Specialist, Richard David. Mr. David?
Thank you. September is National Preparedness Month. The time to plan is now, before emergency happens. This includes being prepared for severe weather, power outages, fires, and other emergencies. Communicate your plans to your loved ones so they know what to expect. Having an emergency kit and supplies is an important way to be prepared. This may include food, water, and medication, as well as some other things we may not have thought about much in the past, like face masks and hand sanitizers. If you already have this, double check that your supplies are current and have not expired. Be prepared is a big part of being safe. Stay informed, stay healthy, and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. David. We will now move on to the minutes from our last meeting. Secretary Treasurer Farrar-Dyke, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. The minutes were posted for your review. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes of August 3rd? If not, I move approval of the August 3rd minutes as circulated. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Rush has seconded. I will ask our General Counsel, Allison Foltz, to conduct the roll call vote.
Thank you very much. Chairman Hart.
Approved.
Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Approve.
Commissioner Farrar-Dyke.
Approve.
Commissioner Hull.
Approve.
And Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Next on our agenda is public comments. We provide an opportunity for public comments at each of our public meetings, and we will now ask if any members of the public who have joined our Zoom webinar would like to speak. If you would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and our staff will unmute one person at a time. Each person will have a maximum of 2 minutes. I will pause now to see if we have any public comments. While we're waiting, I would also remind everyone, including those of you watching on YouTube, that you can always report any concerns through our website, wmsc.gov, through our social media channels like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or by email. Ms. Hogan, do we have anyone who has indicated that they would like to speak today?
No, Chair Hart, I see no hands raised.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hogan. We will now continue with the next agenda item, which is my remarks. My remarks are very brief. Our meeting today includes updates on Washington Metrorail Safety Commission's ongoing safety oversight activities, consideration of final safety event investigation reports, and an update on some corrective action plans and audits. Dr. Meyer, do you have any opening remarks?
Yes, I do. Give me just a moment here. We have continued our hard work since your last public meeting across all areas of our safety oversight program. On August 13th, the WMSC issued a finding that Metrorail is not following its safety certification processes. Metrorail is required to develop a corrective action plan that addresses this finding. Safety certification is designed to ensure that hazards are addressed or mitigated prior to a safety event by considering safety throughout a project's development and implementation process. Metrorail recently requested a short extension of the deadline to develop this initial CAP proposal to significantly improve the quality of the submission. We granted that extension, and the proposal is now due this week for our review and feedback. The finding was based on extensive work over the past year and was issued after targeted findings in specific areas of audits, such as the roadway maintenance machines and automatic train control audits. The WMSC has found similar safety certification deficiencies in our ongoing work on our traction power audit and in the railcar audit that we issued last week. In addition, in coordination with the Wamada Office of Inspector General and Metrorail staff, the WMSC identified that Metrorail did not follow its safety certification process for the Alexandria Rail Yard train control and signal upgrades, which were activated earlier this year. This included bypassing subject matter experts who raised valid concerns about safety processes to instead allow non-expert sign-off on the project, so it could return to service when Metrorail management needed the yard back online for operational purposes. When properly accomplished, the safety certification process identifies hazards and ensures that hazards have been mitigated so that a project, equipment, or system operates as safely as reasonably practicable. In the case of the Alexandria Rail Yard, a hazard analysis was done just as Metrorail issued a temporary use notice, not at the beginning of the process as required. Software verifications were also not completed before the yard was brought back online. The WMSC also identified a safety concern related to the tunnel ventilation project construction on the Red Line between Cleveland Park and Woodley Park stations when we visited the site in August as part of our ongoing fire life safety audit. Specifically, newly installed structural supports obstructed emergency egress paths. The WMSC directed safety changes, and Metrorail has now designed a solution that will provide a safe exit path in the event of an emergency at these locations. We are closely monitoring their implementation of that solution. The team is also working on a draft report for the Emergency Management and Fire Life Safety Audit, which we expect to complete in the coming weeks to transmit to Metrorail for technical review. Safety certification is also the process Metrorail must follow to ensure that hazards are properly identified and mitigated on Silver Line Phase 2. As you'll hear later in this meeting, our oversight of that process in communication with both Metrorail and the Airports Authority remains a continuous, ongoing process. Metrorail has demonstrated a significant commitment to following its safety certification processes for this project, and we've been directly involved and have clearly communicated our requirements and expectations for more than 2 years. Mr. Tinho Sahu will provide you with an update of our work related to Silver Line Phase 2 later in the meeting. We expect to provide these updates on a regular basis now that the construction appears to be nearing substantial completion. Over the last 3 weeks, we've also completed and issued 2 important safety audits. The first of these audits was of Metrorail's Fitness for Duty programs. We identified safety deficiencies, including several related to fatigue, medical monitoring, drug and alcohol testing, and contractor oversight. For example, Metrorail cannot reasonably assure that its employees and contractors who are conducting safety-sensitive duties are free from medical conditions that could cause incapacitation. Medical incapacitation, particularly due to sleep disorders such as sleep apnea, have caused accidents in other rail systems. The Fitness for Duty audit included 11 findings requiring corrective action plans and 4 recommendations that Metrorail is required to address. Last week, the WMSC issued our audit of Metrorail's revenue vehicles or railcar programs. Among the 12 findings in this audit, Metrorail did not follow its safety certification processes for the 6000 series systems rehabilitation and overhaul project. Metrorail also did not follow the other steps improperly created outside of its safety certification process that it told the WMSC were being used for this work. As I mentioned, safety certification is designed to ensure that hazards are identified and addressed prior to a safety event. The railcar audit also identified safety deficiencies related to document control and not following standardized processes for handling wheels out of round. That's a situation in which the wheels are uneven, which can be felt by operators and customers as significant vibrations are bouncing during the ride. Wheels out of round can lead to infrastructure damage, railcar damage, customers falling, and other consequences. The report also includes recommendations related to inward and outward facing audio and image recorders that the National Transportation Safety Board has recommended for transit systems to conduct observations as part of regular hazard identification activities and to improve safety event investigation. Metrorail's corrective action plan proposals for both these audits are due in the next few weeks. Per your guidance at prior meetings and based on staff observations, we have continued to discuss Metrorail's roadway worker protection programs and internal oversight with Metrorail leadership on a regular basis for much of the year. In response to several investigations and other oversight work, Metrorail is planning significant rewrites of its overall rulebook and RWP procedures over the coming year. We appreciate these long-term plans and will track these activities closely. And we'll also continually evaluate the need for any WMSC action on roadway worker safety. In other areas, we are providing staff-level feedback to Metrorail on this year's revision of the WMATA's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan. We expect to see a revised draft from Metrorail by early October. The plan is required to be reviewed and approved annually by Metrorail, including its general manager and board of directors. The plan is then submitted to the WMSC for the Commissioner's consideration and approval. The plan lays out Metrorail's safety commitments and the safety management systems or SMS approach that's required by the FTA and the WMSC. On another note, I'd like to welcome a new WMSC staff member. John Dorenzo has over 30 years of railcar maintenance experience. He had retired earlier this year, and we're happy to have him join us to add expertise, insight, and support for our technical team. As part of our continued growth and development, we are also moving to transition from contracted accounting services to a full-time in-house financial professional. We hope to identify and hire a chief financial officer in the coming weeks. As you can imagine, several WMSC staffers have collateral finance responsibilities, so this new position will be particularly helpful. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Dr. Meyer? Seeing none, we will move on to safety event investigations. There are 2 reports in our consent agenda today. For each of these reports, the initial event involved an individual intentionally placing themselves in the path of a train. The investigation reports are Whiskey 104 and Whiskey 105. The reports contain more details about each event and the emergency response to those events. They will be placed in our website upon adoption. Does any commissioner wish to ask questions about either of these 2 reports? Seeing none, Ms. Fultz, I assume it's okay for us to take both of them at the same time. I would entertain a motion to adopt both of these reports.
Yes, that would be fine.
Thank you, Ms. Fultz.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
Commissioner Rush, is there a second? The second is from Commissioner Hall. Thank you. I will now ask General Counsel Allison Fultz to conduct our recorded vote.
Thank you. Chairman Hart,
Approve both.
Commissioner Al-Khatib,
Approve.
Commissioner
Approve.
Farrar Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hull,
Approve.
and Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you. The report is adopted.
Thank you, Ms. Fultz. We will now move on to investigation reports that are being presented today at this meeting. WMSC Investigations Analyst, Ms. Natalie Keyrose, will present the first reports. Ms. Keyrose?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0106 relates to improper movement from Foggy Bottom Station on May 21st, 2021. This event happened during a service disruption on the blue, orange, and silver lines due to switch issues at the D&G junction. That is the area just east of Stadium Army Station where the orange line meets the blue and silver line.
Because of the service disruption, the Rail Operations Control Center told a train operator of a train that had just arrived at Foggy Bottom to offload the train, clear the interlocking, then go back in service the other way toward Vienna Station. The train operator offloaded the train, but then went to the rear of the train and moved outbound toward Roslyn Station on the inbound track. The train did not have speed commands. An inbound train was on that track at Roslyn Station, so this train moved directly toward that train. As you can see from the image on the slide, the interlocking at Foggy Bottom Station is in the other direction toward Farragut West Station. The controller intended for the train operator to move inbound, cross through the interlocking back to the outbound platform at Foggy Bottom, then continue outbound on the outbound track at the top of the image.
However, the communication was not specific and the train operator was not familiar with the territory. The train operator did not know that there was no interlocking between Roslyn and Foggy Bottom stations. The radio communications were also interrupted by automatic train control personnel who were addressing the switch issue at the D&G junction. After the train began moving, ROCC superintendent saw the improper movement on the digital display in the ROCC and helped to ensure that the controller contacted the train operator to stop before getting even closer to the train that was servicing Roslyn. By the time the train operator stopped the train, it had moved about 840 feet. The train operator then reverse ends and was directed to travel back toward New Carrollton. The train went back in service at Farragut West Station, and the train operator was removed from service at Cheverly Station by the nearest available supervisor. The train operator had approximately 6 months of experience and had only performed a move similar to the intended movement in this situation once since they certified. Metrorail does not require or regularly provide line familiarization or related training to operators. The WMSC is reviewing physical characteristics training and knowledge through ongoing inspection and audit work. We have begun document reviews for our rail operations audit. Interviews for that audit are scheduled next month. Metrorail has an open corrective action plan related to radio communication. Since this event, Metrorail has launched a long-planned 4th operations desk in the ROCC that divides some of the territory that had been covered by Ops 2 in Virginia, specifically parts of the Orange and Silver Line. This reduces the workload on Ops 2 controllers. Related to the underlying switch issue, the WMSC's automatic train control and signaling audit issued in May identified safety deficiencies related to Metrorail switch maintenance and related practices. Metrorail is required to address these corrective action plans. In this event, the point on switch 11A had been replaced with a part not made by the original equipment manufacturer, which requires additional maintenance to maintain a state of good repair. The switch is a Grandmaster 4000, which the ATC audit noted issues with related to safety certification, procurement training, maintenance, and installation. Late last month, following our audit in this event, Metrorail identified specific systemic problems with the point detector on the GM 4000 switches. Metrorail has increased inspections as it assesses long-term repairs. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Key Rose. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Key Rose?
Chairman Hart, I have a question.
Please, Commissioner Lobby.
I was interested in this particular accident because this is yet another case where operating instructions coming from the ROC controller are misunderstood by the operator. Again, in this particular accident, it also said in the report that there was no 100% repeat back of the instructions. Are we doing anything as Washington Metro Safety Commission to address this process issue of providing track instructions and not getting proper feedback and having confusion over what's required? Because we seem to have one or two of these accident investigations every time we meet. Are we doing anything specifically for that, or is this all about retraining?
Commissioner Lobby, we are conducting several activities on this front. Number one, Ms. Quiroz referred to a corrective action plan that we absorbed into our program from FDA's oversight activities. And this relates to radio communications and the radio protocol that governs radio communications. The CAP itself requires ensuring that both field personnel and control center staff adhere to the written requirements as it pertains to radio communications. But we are finding out over and over again through that corrective action plan as it continues to be worked by Metro, which shouldn't be a surprise to you that these radio communication protocols are not being adhered to. This corrective action plan really emerged from the time when the Tri-State Oversight Committee was around back in 2013. So this has been an ongoing CAP for almost 8 years, while FDA had oversight of this activity as well. As part of our rail operations audit, we are planning to conduct an active current assessment of radio practices by both field personnel, including train operators, as well as others who are required to adhere to this protocol. And we will likely prepare a finding that is more attuned and more pertinent to the current conditions that we and you are all observing over and over again when it comes to radio communications. So that is our plan. Going forward as part of our our rail operations audit that is about to kick off in October.
Well, thank you for that. I think radio procedures are an important part of this. I am a little bit concerned about the process of issuing track instructions and confirming track instructions. I'm not sure if the process is right. Again, in this particular accident investigation, there was another issue, and that's that the readback was stepped on by somebody else using the radio. But these are important processes that protect everybody, either working on Metro or passengers and train operators. And I think a good look at the process may be in order to make sure that this safety critical activity is done as safely as possible. So I'm glad we're working on the radio procedures, but I think this might be an area that needs a little bit more attention. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Laube, and thank you for the response, Mr. Marasinha. This is a tricky area in that it sounds obvious just to require readbacks all the time, but it's kind of tricky because sometimes readbacks all the time jam up the radio frequency so much that it has an adverse effect. So we have to be careful not to reach the happy medium and not to overdo it in a way that has adverse consequences. Any other questions from the commissioners for Ms. Quiroz? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report Whiskey 106?
So move.
Commissioner Rush, so moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you for the second, Commissioner Al-Khatib. I will now ask General Counsel Fultz to conduct our recorded vote.
Thank you. Chairman Hart.
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Approve.
Commissioner Farrar-Dyke.
Approve.
Commissioner Hull.
Approve.
And Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you. The report for safety investigation W0106 is adopted.
Thank you, Ms. Fultz. Ms. Quiroz will now present investigation reports Whiskey 107 and Whiskey 108. Ms. Quiroz.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigations Whiskey 0107 and Whiskey 0108 involve improper roadway worker protection and improper vehicle movement at Tinleytown Station on April 9th, 2021. These involve two separate but related events, each with their own investigation report. One work crew in a vent shaft just beyond the station platform did not place required protective equipment, including shuts and lights, on the roadway. That plant maintenance crew and the ROCC controller stated that they downgraded protection because the crew did not expect to be working on the tracks. However, they were still on the roadway in the vent shaft area. There is no such thing as downgrading protection in Metrorail's
roadway worker protection program, and the crew was effectively left without protection. Despite there being no such thing as downgrading in Metrorail's written procedures, the investigation demonstrates that this is commonly allowed by the ROCC and commonly done by crews in the field. The work crew's job safety briefing form stated that exclusive track occupancy was used, even though the protections were not actually established. The shunts and lights are critical to worker protection because they indicate to approaching vehicles that the track is occupied. The shunts indicate occupancy to the signal system, and the lights show an equipment operator of a roadway maintenance machine that they should not enter the work area without explicit permission. Without these shunts and lights or other protective equipment set up, a roadway worker in charge establishing a separate infrastructure renewal program work zone directed an equipment operator the RIC was with to take an RMM through the plant maintenance crew's work zone. An ROCC controller had notified the RIC that there was an additional area of third rail that the RIC had to hot stick to confirm that power was down for the crew's safety. In that communication, the ROCC controller provided the entire length of a segment of third rail rather than just the end of that segment that had to be checked. One end of that segment was within the RIC's working limits, while the other was beyond the RIC's working limits and in the other crew's work zone. The RIC believed the ROCC was stating that gaps at each of those chain markers had to be checked, rather than just one end of that segment of third rail had to be checked. The RMM traveled beyond the RIC's working limits, which were 300 feet from the working limits of the plant maintenance crew, and continued into the plant maintenance crew's work zone. The plant maintenance crew reported that the RMM had entered their work zone. In this event, Metrorail did not remove ROCC personnel or the plant maintenance roadway worker in charge from service for post-event testing as required by Metrorail policies. The WMSC's fitness for duty audit issued last month includes a finding requiring a corrective action plan related to inconsistent post-event testing. The investigation demonstrates significant practical drift from and lack of supervisory oversight of work zone safety practices. The investigation also identified that Metrorail's procedures for work zone setup using a work unit are not clear to personnel in the ROCC or in the field. Metrorail issued bulletins and conducted safety stand-downs for plant maintenance and ROCC staff. WMSC staff and commissioners have raised RWP concerns, and Metrorail has told us for several months that they will be working on significant RWP rule and procedure updates. These updates include changes intended to define processes for establishing work zones using a work unit. Each of these updates, including aspects that remain the same as current rules, will require significant training for all personnel to ensure the complete understanding that is required to keep personnel safe. Thank you. This completes the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. T. Rose. I'm not sure if I heard from your report what was done about the failure to do a drug and alcohol test for the pertinent personnel.
Chairman Hart, in response to this particular event, there was no known activity done to address the lack of post-incident testing. However, as Ms. Quiroz pointed out, a more systemic addressing of that concern that seems to arise often when incidents occur that require post-incident testing of personnel is being addressed through our fitness for duty audit report and the findings that are inherent in those. And Metro is working on those corrective action plans and will be proposing those to us in the next coming weeks.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Smarstenga. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners for Ms. Quiroz on these reports?
I have a couple of questions, Chairman Hart.
Please, Commissioner Lobby.
Again, I just wanted to point out this is another roadway worker protection issue, and we're going to talk about some others here. But in this case, procedures were ignored. Again, there was no post-accident testing after the incidents, and I understand also we did not get notification of the incident from Washington Metro on time. I believe they're required to do it within 2 hours, and notification was delayed quite a bit. But again, I appreciate the long-term activities that Washington Metro is taking to redo their rule book and to basically strengthen the requirements for roadway worker. But in the meantime, every time we have a meeting, we have several of these roadway worker incidents. And again, I would encourage staff to make sure that Washington Metro is addressing these issues comprehensively to make sure that we get safety for the roadway workers as soon as possible and not wait a year or so or however long it takes for a new rule book. But again, there's far too many of these incidents to make me comfortable. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lobby. Let me add on that I'd like to ask Ms. Samar Singh about that issue of downgrading, which is troubling. It was mentioned as a regulatory creep kind of thing. And I wonder if you have any comments on the downgrading aspect and what are we doing in the big picture about that?
Well, I do know they did have a safety stand down right after this incident happened for all the ROCCL controllers and for all RWP level 2 and level 4 RICs regarding the downgrading, that it's not allowed and it's not written anywhere in the rule book, just to make sure that it didn't happen again. They are redoing the RWP rule book, and there was another safety bulletin issued about a few weeks ago, and there is another RWP safety stand down in October regarding the recent RWP incidents. So Metrorail they are trying to get that information out to everyone that this is not allowed.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Quiroz. Ms. Samar Singh, do you have anything to add to that?
Just to underscore what Ms. Quiroz mentioned as part of her prepared remarks for as she presented the investigation facts, which is there's no such thing as downgrading. And so that there should not be any personnel at Metrorail who thinks that is an appropriate course of action. So that is completely in non-conformance to the roadway worker protection rule as it stands today. So downgrading is not something that they should be adhering to or thinking that is sanctioned for them to carry out. Secondly, as Metrorail focuses on the more longer term changes, we continue to engage with Metro almost on a weekly basis on the intelligence that we receive through our safety oversight activities on roadway worker protection rule compliance and non-compliance to various departments within Metro who have responsibilities on the rule, on writing the rule, on training on the rule, as well as performance monitoring of the rule, so that Metro has the most current information from our activities as well in order to address this in more near terms. While they are focused on the longer term activities, we are working with them and providing them the input that we can provide in order for them to make any changes in the near term to reduce these roadway worker protection rule violations as they occur presently. So I just want to also underscore that while we appreciate the longer term efforts, we are also focused on making sure Metro understands the urgency of near-term immediate corrections to avoid a more catastrophic outcome.
Well, thank you, Ms. Samar Singh, and I would like to add that this to me is an ideal opportunity to explore more collaborative approaches than have been used before, as many of you have heard me say. So when the employees are involved in identifying the problem and making the rule, as opposed to just receiving the rule from management, they're much more likely, because now they have an ownership interest in it, they have buy-in in it, and that they're much more likely to not only do it, but to the extent it doesn't quite work, they're also interested in tweaking it. So this is an example where I think would be appropriate to do at least as a beta test, a more collaborative approach to these things, because after all, the people who are going to get hurt are the roadway workers, and they're the ones who have most at stake. They should want more than anyone to make sure that these procedures work. So I would think that they'd be happy to participate in a collaborative approach with management, so that it's not just a unilateral management says do X employees do X, as opposed to employees and management have agreed that here's the problem and here's the solution, and they're going to work together to make it happen better. So I'd like to see if we can explore that more systematically. And Dr. Meyer, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but let me turn that over to you.
Yeah, we'll definitely raise that with Metro leadership and suggest that as an appropriate course of action. As I think you know, I have seen other properties have success through labor management partnership in moving procedures forward and tuning procedures up for appropriate use. So it's definitely something that we'll be suggesting and pushing with Metrorail leadership.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Meyer. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners for Ms. T. Rose on these two reports?
I have a question for Dr. Meyer.
Yes, please.
Dr. Meyer, are we confident that this downgrading, which seemed to exist for a long time with and nobody knew about it, are we confident that this has been eliminated? This accident took place April 9th. Do we do anything to make sure that this doesn't continue to happen?
Well, you know, the phrase trust but verify comes to mind. And so we will remain vigilant to ensure that this aspect, this unwritten procedure, this inappropriate procedure is not applied in the future.
Thank you.
And let me add to that, to the extent that's a manifestation of the culture, that didn't come overnight, and it's not going to leave overnight either. But you raise a very good question, because we need to at least start moving that needle to get rid of that piece of it, so that won't be happening, so that people won't assume that that's an okay thing to do. So thank you for the question, Commissioner Loudon.
I hesitate to add, but you're exactly right that it is a manifestation of the culture, but it's not just limited to this particular area where we've seen this unwritten procedure being applied. We have seen through our oversight work in the past, perhaps with regard to restoration of third rail power, where a great deal of effort upon leadership's part goes into writing procedures, but procedures tend to be complied with more in gist sometimes than to the letter, and that's something that concerns me, and something we will continue to be vigilant for.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Any further questions for Ms. Key Rose on these two reports? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation reports Whiskey 0107 and Whiskey 0108?
So move.
Okay, Commissioner Al-Khatib, I'll take that one from you. Anybody second it? Whoever did the first, the other one can be the second. Was that Commissioner Rush?
No, but it could be.
Okay, thank you. I will now ask General Counsel Allison Foltz. Didn't mean to promote you so rapidly. I will now ask General Counsel Allison Foltz to conduct our recorded vote.
Great, thank you. Chairman Hart.
Approve both.
Yes, and this would be a motion to approve both reports. Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Approve.
Commissioner Farrar-Dyke.
Approve.
Commissioner Hull.
Approve.
And Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you. The reports for safety event investigations W0107 and W0108 are adopted.
Thank you, Ms. Foltz. Mr. Jermaine Walker, our track and structure subject matter expert, will now present the next report, Whiskey 0109. Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0109 relates to the derailment of a work vehicle, tire remover inserter, TR06, on April 29th, 2021. This vehicle is a roadway maintenance machine, or RMM. TR06 derailed in a tunnel between Foggy Bottom and Farragut West stations while being operated by an equipment operator who was not fully trained on his vehicle. The equipment operator moved the vehicle in work mode rather than in travel mode, which released air from the suspension system, reducing flexibility in the front end. The equipment operator did not immediately report the derailment to the Rail Operations Control Center. Instead, the equipment operator first notified a supervisor. The vehicle was the first of two traveling in a convoy block from West Falls Churchyard to Alexandria Yard. In this situation, with two vehicles granted permission to travel together through a specific section of track, the speed limit is 15 miles per hour. TR-06 was traveling at an average of approximately 18.4 miles per hour over the 109 seconds leading up to the derailment. This estimate is based on track circuit data because there is no data available from the vehicle itself. In an interview after the derailment, the equipment operator said that they identified problems with the unit during a pre-trip inspection. They said they inserted a screw spike to replace a missing gripper claw pin before moving the vehicle. The operator also noted suspension issues, but did not report the problems to a supervisor, interlocking operator, or mechanic. After entering the main line, they stopped near East Falls Church Station and switched the vehicle from travel mode to work mode. This initiated an alarm, which the operator ignored. In travel mode, aspects of the vehicle are locked out and hydraulic and braking systems are in a mode designed for movement. In work mode, the unit is lowered to the rails in order to pull out or insert a track tie. The equipment operator does not frequently operate this vehicle and had only operated it to transport it from one location to another. The operator had not used this vehicle in work mode and had never received any specific training or familiarization with the unit's work mode or purpose. The equipment operator said they had not been trained for emergency events. The WMSC issued our RMM audit approximately 6 weeks prior to this event, which identified several issues that manifested themselves in this derailment. Metrorail is required to implement corrective actions to address the training of equipment operators on each type of vehicle they may be directed to operate. Sufficient hands-on experience as part of this training and the need for refresher training on specific vehicles. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. The reference to training brings back a question I meant to ask in a previous one. When the train went on the wrong track and they said that operator wasn't that familiar with that territory, and I'm just thinking that failure to train and the failure to train in this one, we're asking someone to operate equipment without training. That's at a high level. That's a very troubling indication as well. Does anybody, Ms. Samar Singh or Dr. Meyer, anybody have anything, or you, Mr. Walker, have anything to say about that failure to train, and what are we doing to address that issue, that generic or high level issue?
I will just say for training across the board, there are several departments. We've noted that I don't want to say are having difficulty with training, but need a little bit more assistance, need to add a little extra to how they train employees, look at qualifications as opposed to certifications. In this case, seat time with that employee and making sure that employee is very comfortable and familiar with the operation of that unit, especially the ins and outs. We are working on that, at least from a TRST perspective. We are definitely have caps open right now with regards to training. So that is something that we're going to continue to follow up on and continue to add where necessary to prevent further incidents like this, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. That's very helpful. Any other comments from Dr. Meyer or Ms. Samar Singh?
Chairman Hart, to add to what Mr. Walker was saying, in our work, including our audits and investigations like this, we take almost a soup to nuts look at training. And by that, what I mean is not only just looking at the availability of training or trained personnel, we look at the appropriateness and applicability of the training, how they have been designed with the practical applications of that training in mind, the availability of the information of whether or not a certain personnel is trained or not, or whether their certification is current or not, and whether that information is available to supervisory personnel in order to make the correct assignments, such as in this case, to make sure that you're assigning an operator who is qualified, who has the certification current in order to operate a specific vehicle. We are looking at all of this when we conduct our audits as well as investigations like this. So it's when Metro refers to, or you hear the word training, what we are looking for is the applicability, the availability, and the availability of information in order to make the proper assignments of trained personnel to conduct a specific set of work activities. So that is something that we are pursuing and continue to pursue on an ongoing basis through various avenues in our program.
Thank you, Ms. Marasinga. Can I infer from your use of the word current that it is not just initial training, but also recurrent training from time to time?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from Dr. Meyer? You have any comments, any other thoughts, or any other questions from other commissioners on this report?
Only other thing
I do. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr.
I would just mention if you look at our history of audit reports, you'll notice that almost every title ends with the phrase "and training," because it is a function that we pay very close attention to. And I was just thinking about Mr. Walker as he was speaking. Even our very first audit on track, which he was the subject matter expert responsible for right out of the box, was a huge focus for us. So it clearly is something that we pay careful attention to.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Labby, did you have a comment?
Well, actually, I had a comment.
Oh, okay, Commissioner Hall.
In this particular instance, the operator of the equipment, as I understand it, was actually certified to be able to operate this piece of equipment. But then in subsequent investigation, it was determined that the individual did not have adequate training. So then, of course, it calls into the question of certification to operate various pieces of equipment, and how valid, therefore, are these various certifications.
And the recurrency issue as well.
Yes.
Any comments from anyone on any of that?
Well, at the risk of being redundant, I would just say that yes to all of the above. We as we pay attention in our audit work to training, we also consider very much the adequacy of the training, not just its completion, and the recurrent training needs, and whether or not that training is actually provided and delivered. But I don't know if Ms. Marasinga or Mr. Walker would have any specific comments related to this case.
Without being long-winded, I would just say that this particular piece of equipment is part of other equipment that we would consider specialized equipment that really needs a lot of what we would call seat time to really feel comfortable, at least in our opinion, not for an operator to feel comfortable with, to be able to operate this equipment, not just only in travel mode, but in work mode. This operator also didn't have experience with this equipment in work mode. So of course it was concerning to see the operator transition from travel mode to work mode to correct an issue, which they really didn't fully understand. So at the end of one of the caps again that we have open right now is not only looking at this type of specialized equipment, but other specialized equipment that requires extensive training, extensive seat time, a lot of familiarization with the equipment and just how to operate it, even if you're not using it in a work location. So that issue, along with operators who may get trained on this equipment and not operate the equipment right away, may take about a year or two. And then that comes in, and then what comes into play there is just recertification or refamiliarizing those individuals on this equipment again. So I know that's a long way to put it, but those are just some of the things we're working on with regards to training in this aspect.
And one of the key takeaways is that training was, as I've been reminded, was an important component of our RMM, our roadway maintenance machines audit that Jermaine participated in heavily, and we do have as you mentioned, caps that resulted from that audit that anticipated an issue very similar to the one we saw in this event.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Any other questions from any of the commissioners to Mr. Walker for this report? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report Whiskey 0109?
So moved.
Moved, Commissioner Rush. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Rush.
Second.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Hull. Thank you, Commissioner Hull. I will now ask General Counsel Fultz to conduct a recorded vote.
Chairman Hart,
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib,
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar-Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hull,
Approve.
Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you. The report for safety event investigation W0109 is adopted.
Thank you, Ms. Fultz. Mr. Bruce Walker, our subject matter expert for operations, will present the next report, Whiskey 0110. Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0110 relates to improper roadway worker protection between Naylor Road and Southern Avenue stations on April 28, 2021. The Advanced Mobile Flagger, or AMF, assigned to warn trains departing Southern Avenue station of a track inspection crew on the tracks ahead appears to have fallen asleep in a platform shelter and was not in the required position to provide this safety protection for the inspection team. The roadway worker in charge did not confirm that the AMF was properly in place prior to entering the roadway from Naylor Road Station. The AMF, who had moved to Southern Avenue Station, also did not respond as required when the inspectors were granted file time, which would have required the AMF to hold trains at the station. The AMF did not respond when file time was relinquished. File time is used to stop train movements when passing an area with restricted view, limited clearance, or other attributes that could make it a dangerous location for roadway workers if trains were moving. As the inspector walked towards Southern Avenue, train 510 approached them without any safety precautions in place. The inspectors had to move to a place of safety as the train passed. Data recordings show the train slowed as it passed the workers. Neither the train operator nor the inspectors reported this safety issue. A second train was berthed on the platform as the inspection crew arrived. The AMF, or Advanced Mobile Flagger, was still in the platform shelter. The AMF told the roadway worker in charge that they were tired from working a 12-hour overnight shift for a different company the night before. The roadway worker in charge stated that they planned to report that event after returning to the rail yard, but did not report the event until the following morning when they arrived at work. Track Instructions Department supervision did not immediately report the event at that time. Instead, they mentioned it the following day, 2 days after the event, to other Metrorail management. The Rail Operations Control Center then verified the event through closed-circuit television. It was only at that time that Metrorail as an organization properly recognized and reported the event. Metrorail did not have RailPros, the company that employed this AMF, make the contractor available for an interview. RailPros instead fired the contractor. Metrorail is required to address several fatigue-related issues due to open corrective action plans and new caps that are required in response to findings in the Fitness for Duty audit that was issued on August 31st of this year. The Fitness for Duty audit also includes a recommendation that Metrorail must address related to contractor fatigue and other oversight. Thank you, and that completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. And can I assume that the caps relating to fatigue relate to an overall fatigue management program and not just compliance with hours of service rules?
Yes, sure. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Walker?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Lobby.
Not a question, but just a comment. Another roadway worker protection issue where nothing went right, procedures not followed. The watchman didn't answer the way he should have, and that should have been an indication that they should have stopped the procedure until things were corrected. But again, there's too many issues with this roadway worker protection on Washington Metro, and I'm just hesitant to wait for a new rule book to cure these problems. I think they need to be addressed immediately.
Thank you for that comment, Commissioner Lobby. Any comments from Dr. Meyer or Ms. Marsing on that, or Mr. Walker?
I would just say that we share the concern and we share the urgency, and we are in communication with Metro safety leadership most days to discuss these events and to discuss what can be done about them. There are recent activities that have gone on in Metro, such as safety stand-downs to try to limit these, and WMSC staff are continually discussing further either findings or directives that would be appropriate.
So thank you for that. I'm going to ask a relatively off-the-wall question, which is, does anybody have any sense of the extent to which what we're seeing in terms of roadway protection issues, roadway worker protection issues, is typical or atypical in other comparable mass transit properties around the country? Do we have any sense of that?
Well, I think it is. It's not an off-the-wall question. It's a perfectly reasonable question. Just unfortunately, almost any question that seeks to compare one transit property to the other is a very, very difficult question to answer, simply because of the lack of centralized safety oversight and the lack of reliable data. That said, it is certainly my gut feeling, and I wish I had more to go on, but it's really my gut feeling and to some extent some experience that Metro sees more RWP reported events than its sister properties. Some of that is probably because, well, there are more events, but some of it is also, I think, directly the result of this heightened awareness and Metro's deliberate work on a positive reporting culture where these things are communicated. That's an imperfect work in progress, but in my limited experience, they are perhaps a little farther along at reporting these events than others and deeply studying them. Some of these events that come before the commission for very, very formal review would not even be reported at other properties. So it's extremely difficult to answer your very relevant question. Regardless, we are responsible for Metrorail safety oversight, and RWP events, any of them are too many, and we'll work with Metro to drive that number downward.
Chairman Hart, in my past career years, I've had the opportunity to see many transit agencies firsthand in through audit and review activities, and I completely support the remarks that CEO Meyer has just made. I think he's spot on.
Appreciate that. You know, one other thing I'll add to it is just it's not really directly an answer to the question, but you know, many of us who use the system are keenly aware of variables like what time the last train operates, what time the first train operates. So it's very easy for the layperson to think of Metro as inactive overnight. And nothing could be further from the truth, as I'm sure Ms. Quiroz would testify. Metro is extraordinarily busy in the overnight hours, attempting to pack in quite a lot of work and moving work crews from reporting locations in the yards and in other locations to where the work is needed. Metro has a lot of territory that is adjacent to Class 1 territory, and consequently, what that means is crews can't just simply get in a truck and drive to the work site. They have to arrive there via rail vehicles, and those rail vehicles themselves have to be moved through other work zones that are being set up and established. So Metro is a very complex and busy city of activity overnight, and each one with many, many work zones, each one of which could be the site for one of these incidents, or could be the site for something much worse. So it's just important to keep in mind the extraordinary high workload both in the control center and out in the field at Metro overnight. That's not offered as any way to excuse road worker protection events. It is actually offered more to give you a window into to something that we are thinking about in terms of ways to curtail these events.
Well, thank you for that, Dr. Meyer. That's very helpful in terms of letting us know about the complexity of the issues that are involved here, and which I'm sure is in part what causes the difficulty of solving them, despite many efforts over many years. So thank you for that. Are there any other questions from any of the other commissioners for this report? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report Whiskey 0110?
I'm sorry, I do have a question.
Yes, please, Commissioner Farrar.
Question is, when will the response come back to this this report as to actions taken?
Who can help with that question?
I'm not sure I totally understand it. For each of these reports, we do place in the cover sheet corrective actions or mitigations that are relevant to the report. But we don't, as a routine matter, of course, come back to the commissioners with specific input on specific events. But we certainly could do so if you have a specific question you'd like us to hunt down an answer to.
Well, in the reports, we hear of certain actions. Sometimes I would like to know what actually resulted from that. You put the report in, and what is the response from Wamada as far as the actions that were taken to resolve it?
For each of these reports, when you read in Metro's words about corrective actions or mitigations that are being taken, we are working collaboratively with Metro to improve the extent to which things that don't rise to formal caps that are WMSC tracked do get tracked inside of Metro. And I wonder if I could call on Ms. Samara Singh to talk a little bit about that process.
Of course, Commissioner Farrar, I believe you are talking about those internal corrective action plans that emerge out of these investigations. And I would also want to make the distinction, aside from that, you also see in the investigation reports, in particular this one, in the report itself, as well as in our cover sheet, we inventory all of the immediate term corrections that have gone into effect as a result of the event. So under corrective actions, you'll see a summary of all the 4 or 5 steps that took place as a result of this particular event, and the actions taken by Metro to correct it. Separate and apart from that, there are corrections that are instituted within a given department or several departments that had responsibility in causation of that incident, where there are improvements that are written in, which are then tracked internally by Metro Safety Department to ensure that these are carried out by the departments that have responsibilities either in kind of across the board training a certain set of personnel, rewriting certain procedures or policies, or conducting supervisory oversight. So departments within Metro are required to own these internal corrective actions and conduct them within a specified time frame that they, along with the safety department, agree upon. And we, as the WMSC, receive updates on the status of these internal corrective action plans on a occasional basis, which we are putting into effect into a more predictable cadence by asking for updates every quarter. So that is what is underway in terms of having an ongoing understanding of where things stand with these internal corrective actions that Metro undertakes following various investigations like this one.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marsinga. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners regarding this report? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report Whiskey 0110?
So move.
So move, Commissioner Hull. Is there a second? Thank you for that, Commissioner Hull. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Rush. Thank you for that. I will now ask General Counsel Fultz to conduct our recorded vote.
Thank you very much. Chairman Hart.
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib. Don't see Commissioner Al-Khatib. We'll come back to him. Commissioner Farrar-Dyke.
Approve.
Commissioner Hull.
Approve.
Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
And in fact, we have 4 affirmative votes. So I will ask for Commissioner Al-Khatib's vote once more. But we have sufficient votes for the report to be adopted. So with that, The report for safety event investigation W0110 is adopted.
Thank you, Ms. Foltz. Now, Mr. Jermaine Walker will present the next investigation report, which is Whiskey 0111. Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0111 relates to a serious employee injury at the Shore Howard U Station on April 12, 2021. A fire protection technician conducting standpipe flow and hydrostatic testing slipped and fell in an area that had filled with approximately 6 inches of water. The water had filled the area as the technician took apart their equipment at the monster gauge without a discharge hose and placed to divert the water from the work area. The injury was not reported to the Rail Operations Control Center at the time of the event. The technician reported the injury to a supervisor, but said they would attempt to walk it off. After returning to the field office, the technician informed the supervisor they would need medical treatment. The technician took themselves to the hospital. The technician was diagnosed with a broken foot. The supervisor did not report this to the ROC. A different fire protection supervisor reported the injury to the ROC approximately 10 hours after it occurred. Metrorail notified the WMSC 2 hours and 16 minutes after that report. The investigation demonstrated that Metrorail had provided preventive maintenance checklists for this task to the WMSC as complete and in effect shortly before this event. However, the departments involved in this work stated during this investigation that those were still in draft form, had not been distributed to technicians, and technicians had not been trained on those specific revised procedures. This training and reference information would help ensure the work is carried out correctly and safely. After this event, Metrorail conducted a job hazard analysis for standpipe and hydrostatic testing, which determined that additional training is required for this work. This includes on specific forms and National Fire Protection Association standards. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. So when they determine that additional training is required for this work, what's the next step on having that happen?
The next step is implementation, making sure that all required employees are familiar with the new process and procedures to make sure that an incident like this doesn't happen again.
So are we requiring that, or are they doing it on their own and we're taking their word for it and waiting to see, or how's that working?
It's required. It was something that was identified right before this incident happened. And when this incident happened, it just was not implemented at the time, or nobody or the employees out in the field was not familiar with it as of yet.
Thank you. And again, we have a situation regarding failure to report, which is actually sort of analogous to the failure to drug and alcohol test. But so what are they doing about that? Those multiple failures to report?
There is an ongoing effort underway. If the commissioners recall, in October of last year, we had issued a standalone finding regarding ensuring that all personnel, including management, frontline personnel, as well as contract employees, understand the requirements under which the entirety of Metrorail is governed by when it comes to incident reporting and investigation practices. There has been training put in place, including computer-based training, to ensure that all the named classes of personnel that I just listed understand their obligations when they are part of a safety event that has just occurred, or their obligations as part of an investigations team that is conducting an investigation into a safety event that has occurred. It has been an ongoing effort to ensure that maybe long-standing confusion about what is required is dismantled, and employees and others are made aware of their obligations that are required through these procedures that Metro holds as part of its organizational procedures and practices. So we continue to maintain an ongoing monitoring effort to understand to what extent all employees of all levels understand their obligations when it comes to incident reporting and investigation activities. And here too, this is an example where additional coaching, instruction is required to ensure employees understand that they are all conducting the work in a coordinated fashion to ensure the integrity and accuracy of investigations, including notifications.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Do we have any idea whether failure to report is because of not knowing of the requirement, or is it because of fear of punishment, or don't know who to report to, or do we have any sense of what the problem is?
Chairman Hart, I would supposit that it's a combination of all those, as well as there seemed to be an understanding that work needs to happen. There seems to be operational expediency in certain cases placed above all else, whereas safety needs to be the highest level of priority. You've seen in the previous investigations that were adopted a sense of urgency and rushing to get certain things done. And so here too, it's the safety culture that needs to eliminate that mistaken understanding that operational expediency is the priority, is an ongoing effort by us as well as Metro to ensure that all employees understand that safety is the highest level priority, not expediency or convenience.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Samar Singh. That's very helpful. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners for Mr. Walker regarding this report? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report whiskey 0111?
So moved.
Move Commissioner Rush, thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Commissioner Hull, second, thank you. I will now ask General Counsel Fultz to conduct our recorded vote.
Thank you. Chairman Hart.
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar-Dyke.
Approve.
Commissioner Hull.
Approve.
And Commissioner Rush.
Approved.
Thank you. The report for safety event investigation W0111 is adopted.
Thank you, Ms. Fultz. Now, Mr. Jermaine Walker will present the next investigation report, whiskey 0112. Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation whiskey 0112 relates to a serious customer injury between Clarendon and Courthouse stations on May 8th, 2021. A customer who was walking between two rail cars on a moving train using the end of doors slipped and fell off the train. The rider stated they attempted to hold on, but eventually fell onto the tracks between stations. Forward-facing video from a following train shows something on the roadway near the third rail just before Clarendon Station. Based on the totality of the evidence, this was most likely the injured person. It is not clear if that following train made contact with them. Approximately an hour after falling, the rider walked through the tunnel to the Clarendon Station platform. They waited on the platform, boarded another train to Vienna Station, then took a bus to Tyson's Corner Station. The following morning, they contacted a family member and were picked up by car in that area. That family member called the Rail Operations Control Center at 8:55 a.m., approximately 11 hours after the event occurred. Metrorail has safety warning signage on end of rail car doors stating that the doors are for emergency use only. This includes a stop sign and the words "Do not open, emergency use only." Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. So I'm not sure I understand. Was it the end of train door, or was it a door between cars and this person fell from between the cars?
Mr. Walker, you're muted.
Sorry about that. It was in between. It was in between cars.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners regarding this report? It sounds to me that it's amazing that
Uh,
this is still alive.
There is a question that I have.
Yes, please.
And I know it was some years ago that Metro put up the current signage that it has, indicating that passengers are not to go from car to car. And I'm just thinking, the rationale to not lock the doors of the rail cars, it's my recollection that it's mostly due for the need for access for emergency purposes.
That is correct.
Okay.
And the ability to egress too, I would have to assume that if it were locked from both directions.
In an emergency situation, yes.
Right.
Chairman Hart, I've observed, Washington Metro employees using the door with the train moving to move from car to car on a regular basis. And although it says for emergency only, I think it is probably used pretty regularly by WMATA employees to move from one car to the next. Seen police officers do it. I've seen managers of train operators do it also.
Personally, I don't take exception to trained individuals walking from car to car, particularly while the train is traversing tangent track, straight track. In a curved area, it can become a little bit more dicey.
Does anybody know whether employees and other personnel are instructed about whether to go between cars except in emergencies?
There are operational needs from time to time for Metrorail employees to move from car to car.
I don't think that's unique to WMATA from my writing on other systems.
Actually, what I find more unique to WMATA, just based on the other system I have most experience in, is New York, and people go from car to car regularly on those trains.
Well, that has been a matter over many years that has decreased deliberately. It is no safer there, and in fact, in some car classes, it's even more dangerous because of the width of the car. It increases the distance between lip to lip in a curved area of track. So it is actually against city ordinance to move from car to car in New York City, and has been for a number of years. So a generation ago, it was extremely common. It still happens, but it is the sort of thing that if NYPD sees someone move from car to car, they are authorized to issue a summons for it.
Thank you.
Sees an unqualified customer as opposed to sees a transit employee, of course.
Sure. Thank you. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Walker on this report? Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt investigation report whiskey 0112?
So moved.
So moved, Commissioner Al-Khatib. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Farrar-Dyke. Thank you. I'll now ask General Counsel Fultz to conduct our recorded vote.
Thank you very much, Chairman Hart.
Approved.
Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar-Dyke.
Approved.
Commissioner Hull.
Approve.
Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you. Safety Event Investigation Report W0112 is adopted.
Thank you for that, Ms. Fultz. And this reminds me to ask you, did we ever ask Commissioner Al-Khatib about the report that he did not comment on, whether he approved that or not?
We did not come back to him, but I can quickly inquire whether Commissioner Al-Khatib for Safety Investigation Report W0110, which was improper roadway protection, worker protection between Naylor Road and Southern Avenue stations. This was an event on April 28th, 2021. Wanted to solicit your vote and whether you adopt that report.
Yes, my vote is approved.
Great, thank you. We will
Thank
let
you,
the
Ms.
record
Fultz.
reflect.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Richard Davis, our emergency management specialist, will present our next report. Mr. Davis? Mr. David?
Investigation W0113 relates to an evacuation for life safety reasons of Capitol South Station on May 13, 2021.
Your communications is not working well. Your communication is very iffy.
Investigation Whiskey 0113. Can you hear me, sir?
Your audio is very distorted, Mr. David. Maybe turning off your video might increase the bandwidth on your audio.
All right, we'll try that. Can you hear me now?
No, unfortunately, that theory did not succeed. We may need a backup presenter to make the audio work.
I can mute and then unmute. Does that work any better?
Still not much better. Your communication when you gave the safety message at the beginning was outstanding. I don't know what happened since then.
Mr. David, if I can step in your place, I'll continue going forward.
Fine. Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Sure, Commissioner Hart. So investigation Whiskey 0113 relates to an evacuation for fire life safety reasons of the Capitol South Station on May 13, 2021. This is classified as an accident level event by the FTA regulation. U.S. Capitol Police investigating a suspicious package in the general vicinity of the station cordoned off an area that included the escalator entrance to the station. The elevator remained open for customers. A Metro Transit Police Department officer dispatched to the scene did not integrate their response with the Capitol Police Incident Command System structure. The MTPD officer did not establish themselves as what Wamada terms an on-scene commander and did not establish the staging area for the Metrorail response. The officer did report the blocked entrance to MTPD dispatch. An MTPD dispatcher then reported the closed entrance to the Rail Operations Information Center and the Rail Operations Control Center. The ROCC then instructed the station manager to close and evacuate the station. Trains bypassed the station from 4:51 p.m. until 5:04 p.m. when the entrance reopened. Since this event, the ROCC has instituted previously planned organization and incident management changes. Metro continues work to revise SOP 1A and associated emergency response checklist. The MTPD training and after-action reviews are being improved and reviewed with other Metrorail departments. The WMSC is reviewing related areas as part of the emergency management and fire life safety audit. We expect the draft of this report to be completed next month. Thank you, and this completes the report for Mr. David.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners regarding this report? I don't remember us having one like this before, so I'm not sure I would know the right questions to ask, actually. Okay, hearing no questions, is there a motion to adopt investigation report Whiskey 0113? I'll make the motion.
Sorry, I had my voice off mute. I was on mute. Sorry, Chair Hart.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Commissioner Rush, thank you for that motion. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Farardike, thank you for the second. I will now ask General Counsel Fultz to conduct our recorded vote.
Right. Chairman Hart.
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Approved.
Commissioner Farardike.
Approve. Commissioner Hull.
Approve.
Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you. The report for safety event investigation W0113 is adopted.
Thank you, Ms. Fultz. Mr. Richard Davis will now present our next investigation report. Mr. David?
Okay, I'm going to try this again. Is it any better now?
That's much better.
Okay, thank you. Investigation Whiskey 0114 relates to an evacuation for life safety reasons at Greensboro Station on April 15, 2021. A Metrorail rider conveyed a bomb threat against the Spring Hill Station and later boarded a train towards Largo Town Center Station. The Metro Transit Police Department stated that the initial call for service came in at 5:23 p.m. At 5:31 p.m., MTPD asked the ROCC to hold a different train moving towards Largo Town Center at Greensboro Station. At 5:36 p.m., the MTPD dispatcher stated that the trains were being held due to a bomb threat. By 5:45 p.m., MTPD review of the closed circuit television had identified that the individual believed to have made the bomb threat had actually boarded a separate train, which was already at Largo Town Center. Approximately 6:28 p.m., the ROCC Assistant Superintendent conveyed a message from MTPD that the other trains needed to be searched. MTPD did not properly communicate the establishment of incident command or establish a forward liaison. Nothing was found in the searches of the train, and no facilities were evacuated. No other facilities were evacuated. During this event, the ROCC Assistant Superintendent was making personal phone calls. This is against Metrorail rules, but did not directly impact the response. Metrorail is still working on corrective actions related to investigation Whiskey 0084, the evacuations of trains near Fort Totten and Georgia Ave Petworth Station without proper safety equipment. Therefore, there are no additional corrective actions related directly to this investigation. The WMSC is further reviewing these areas as a part of the emergency management and fire life safety audit. As I mentioned, or as Mr. Walker mentioned, we are expected to transmit a draft of this report to Wamada next month. And that completes this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. David. Let me ask Dr. Meyer, what is our role regarding training for the police officers about bomb events?
I'm sorry, about what, sir?
About bombs that are reported.
We don't play any role in bombs per se, because of course that's security and our jurisdiction doesn't exist there. However, doesn't extend to that. However, our jurisdiction as a safety oversight organization does very plainly extend to customer safety and employee safety in the system. And consequently, our role here is ensuring that when Metrorail has established procedures for handling any kind of an event that may affect customer and employee safety, that they adhere and follow to their procedures. So as far as training anyone to respond to bombs, that's well outside our jurisdiction and area of expertise. However, training to ensure that Metrorail emergency procedures are followed, that procedures for tracking or for evacuations are followed appropriately, that is in our lane, and that's the focus and the limit of our interest.
I will say, if I may, I'm a little surprised at Dr. Meyer's response. I'm not even sure I was just going to say there's a fine line between safety and security. I'm not sure there is a line between safety and security. It seems to me security is an aspect of safety, but I don't know that we need to debate that today. But I just for the record, I'm not sure I agree completely with Dr. Meyer's description of our jurisdiction.
The way I understand it, and you're right, it is fuzzy. And in fact, when you go to Spanish-speaking countries, which I've done at NTSB, there are no separate words for the two, for safety and security. So, but the way I understand it, it's quote defined in the United States is safety relates to inadvertent wrongdoing, security relates to intentional wrongdoing.
I definitely subscribe to that definition, and I also very much have appreciated Commissioner Rush's viewpoint of, and completely agree with it, of security being a subset of safety. My attempt, and maybe I was a little overzealous at it, but I wanted to make sure I was clear that we don't have any particular expertise in policing or police work. So I wanted to make sure that when it comes to training a police department and how to do their policing powers, that's obviously outside of our view. But often in doing those policing or security response response activities, it does affect customer safety, and that's certainly in our wheelhouse.
Thank you. So there was reference in this report to a previous investigation, Whiskey 0084, and that the work is still ongoing. Do we have any updates regarding, and that's why we didn't have any additional corrective actions related to this investigation. Do we have any progress reports on the work from Whiskey 0084?
Chair Hart, no, not currently, but these are the items that we continue to track through the safety department, especially in understanding what their internal corrections and where the status of each of those lie. And this correlates back to a question that Commissioner Farrar-Dyke raised a few investigations ago this afternoon about how we oversee the internal corrective actions that Metro has put upon itself following investigation.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. David on this report?
Yes, Chairman Hart, as a commissioner, as a user of the system, I'm shocked that it took over an hour between the fact that somebody conveyed a bomb threat to the time they actually searched the train from 5:23 to 6:28. Over an hour it took before they actually searched the train. That just seemed to be a very long time. Although, you know, that's not something that we have, control over, but it seemed to be a shocking long time.
And Commissioner Al-Khatib, thank you for that comment. I agree with you. That's why I was asking Dr. Meyer, what is our role with respect to training of the police department? I wonder, though, if there is some notification role. I imagine some notification has already occurred, but I mean, some notification of our concern about how long that took.
Chairman Hart, yes, these are being conveyed almost in real time as we've found out about a given event through event notifications, and when our staff participate in various investigative activities, including interviews of the personnel involved. We do, as part of those activities, communicate the urgency of the need to be more coordinated and more timely in the response activities. And this goes back to the discussion we had earlier this afternoon, which is we are focused on the individual parts that support a certain activity or practice, but also we are promoting a whole of organization approach by Metro when considering their activities and responses to any given activity that they undertake to ensure the safety of the system, rather than departments in isolation conducting work without the understanding or transparency to another department that might have a shared role in a task. We continue to promote the need to collaborate across departments so that activities, including emergency response activities, are conducted as a single unit in a coordinated manner within Metro, with the benefits seen by customers as well as employees as a result.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Samar Singh. That's very helpful. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners for Mr. David on this report? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report Whiskey 0114?
So moved.
Moved, Commissioner Hull. Thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Al-Khatib. Thank you for that. I will now ask General Counsel Fultz to conduct our recorded vote.
Thank you. Chairman Hart.
Approved.
Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar-Dyke.
Approved.
Commissioner Hull.
Approved.
Commissioner Rush.
Approved.
Thank you. The report for safety event investigation W0114 is adopted.
Thank you, Ms. Fultz. We will now take up the next agenda item. That was our last investigation report. The next agenda item is corrective action plans. Ms. Samar Singh, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. As Dr. Meyer noted earlier, we have granted Metrorail an extension until tomorrow afternoon to submit a CAP proposal to address the safety certification finding we issued last month. when CAP proposals are submitted, our team begins reviewing them to determine whether the CAP will address the finding it is associated with. If it does not, the WMSC provides feedback and guidance for further revision by WMATA. If the CAP will address the finding sufficiently, the WMSC approves it for implementation. The WMSC has approved 10 corrective action plan proposals related to the automatic train control and signaling audit that was issued in the spring. 6 others related to that same audit remain in the feedback process. Initial CAP proposals are due at the end of this month for the fitness for duty audit that we issued on August 31st. And the railcar audit CAP proposals are due in mid-October.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Samar Singh. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Samar Singh? Hearing none, we will now move on to our next item, which is audits, with an update from Audit Program Manager, Mr. Davis Ratic. Mr. Ratic.
Thank you, Chair Hart. As Dr. Meyer and Ms. Marcinga noted, we issued 2 audits since your last meeting. The first of Metrorail's Fitness for Duty programs was issued on August 31st. The second of Metrorail's revenue vehicle or railcar programs was issued last week. Each of these audits had significant findings related to safety that Metrorail is required to address through corrective action plans. Last week, we transmitted the draft high voltage and traction power audit report to Metrorail for a 30-day technical review period. We are working now to finalize a draft report for our emergency management and fire life safety audit. We conducted site visits for that audit last month. Our next audit getting underway relates to rail operations such as train operators, supervisors, station managers, and associated training personnel. Interviews are scheduled next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ratic. And let me just add at this point, kudos to the entire staff, to Dr. Meyer and the way he has run the entire staff to be able to continue all of these activities in the middle of a COVID pandemic. So kudos to you guys for continuing to be able to do that. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Ratic's report? Okay, we will now move on to the next agenda item, which is our regular status report on our oversight of the Silver Line Phase 2 safety certification process. Mr. Tino Sahu, the Commission's traction power expert and safety certification oversight lead, will provide this presentation. Mr. Sahu.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Hart. So as you know, one of the WMSC's responsibilities as a state safety oversight agency for Metrorail is oversight of the safety certification process. In addition to federal regulation, the WMSC Compact gives us oversight responsibilities for projects under design or construction by entities other than WMATA that'll become part of the Metrorail system. As mentioned earlier in this meeting, although we have found deficiencies in other areas of Metrorail's safety certification processes, our observations to date show that Metrorail is carefully applying its safety certification process for the Silver Line Phase 2 safety certification and activation effort. Silver Line Phase 2 is being built by the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, also known as MWA. When construction is substantially complete, Metrorail will conduct additional testing and preparations before taking ownership of the new stations, tracks, and rail yard. Phase 2 will extend the Silver Line from the Phase 1 terminus at Wheelie-Reston East to Ashburn via Dulles International Airport. Phase 2 also includes a new rail yard near the airport. The WMSC's role is oversight of the safety certification process and eventual concurrence with Metrorail's Safety and Security Certification Verification Report. That report is Metrorail's documentation that it has identified and appropriately mitigated known hazards, and that the project has followed other aspects of the design, construction, and implementation process. Our work is entirely dependent on the progress that the Airports Authority and Metrorail make on their work. The flow on this slide shows some of the key steps as defined in the 2013 cooperative agreement between WMATA and MWA. We are not able to set any specific timeline for our concurrence because it is based on Metrorail and the Airports Authority demonstrating testing and training and providing documentation of each step in the process. We are shadowing Metrorail and the Airports Authority as they complete the process in the 2013 cooperative agreement. Ultimately, our anticipated concurrence will be with the Wamada's Safety and Security Certification Verification Report, also known as the SSCVR. This includes the closure and mitigation of items that the WMSC has identified and communicated through our independent safety reviews of the project. WMATA's process is to submit the final draft of this report to its Safety Certification Review Committee. Once the SCRC approves it, Metrorail then sends the report to the WMSC for final review. WMSC concurrence is required before Metrorail can begin revenue service. Right now, WMATA and MWA believe substantial completion could occur later this fall, which could lead to Metrorail completing testing, hiring, training, and other necessary steps around spring of 2022. However, this is dependent on testing and other activities. Because this project includes one entity that is primarily responsible for construction and another that is responsible for staffing, training, and operations, the WMSC has divided our pre-revenue service review into two parts. Part one is focused on the construction work that falls primarily under the Airports Authority, or known as MWA. This has included site visits, the WMSC's independent fire life safety assessment, document reviews, and frequent meetings and discussions with MWA, WMATA, FTA Project Management Oversight, or PMOC, and others. We have been providing drafts to MWA of our pre-revenue service review part one with updates as items are closed out. We're tracking approximately 24 open items at this point out of more than 100 items that we have tracked over the course of this process. We receive and review documentation before we close out each item. Part two of our pre-revenue service review, or PRSR, will focus on Metrorail's pre-revenue and readiness activities. This includes the processes related to adequate staffing, training, and operations, as well as the identification, mitigation, and prevention of operational hazards. This requires additional observation of activities after WMATA expands its operational readiness activities. So the WMSC will prepare a draft PRSR Part 2 after those operations have begun. All of these steps and requirements are based on Metrorail's own safety certification requirements, agreements, and policies. The WMSC has clearly communicated these for more than 2 years. We're hopeful that Metrorail will continue to follow its processes and documentation so that the WMSC will be able to concur that WMATA has properly completed its safety certification process. Thank you. That completes the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Sahu, for that very comprehensive report. And based on what you're saying, certainly WMATA deserves kudos for following the safety certification process on this major project. So that's really great that they're doing that. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Sahu's report? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to the next item on the agenda, which is resolutions. Do we have any resolutions on our agenda today?
Chair Hart, we do not have any other business to present before the commissioners, but if I could, I'd like to take a moment to thank Ms. Allison Fultz for her extensive work in helping to establish the WMSC. She was here before the commissioners hired me, and her extensive efforts to bring us to this point where we have such a robust and effective safety oversight program. I think she can be very, very proud of her support and accomplishments, working as a valued part of standing up and operating the WMSC. Unfortunately for us, this will be her last public meeting as our general counsel, and I wanted just to take a moment on behalf of us all to say that we do wish her all the best.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. And I would like to add to that and take this opportunity to add my thanks to Ms. Fultz for all that she did as our legal advisor to get the commission up and running within the required timeframe and to ensure that we have been performing our duties as required in the compact and related documents. So I would thank you so much for that. And I would like to wish Ms. Fultz the best of continued success in whatever is next in her career.
Thank you very much. I just want to briefly express my gratitude for this opportunity, which has been just an extraordinary view into setting up a new agency, making sure that it's doing what it needs to do and also fulfilling its mandate, which is an extremely important one. And so I leave with incredible gratitude, and I know that the WMSC will continue to do fantastic work. And as a Metro rider and resident of the greater Washington area, I will continue to watch its work with interest. So thank you again.
Thank you very much, Ms. Foltz. Any other commissioners like to say any final words to Ms. Foltz?
Well, Allison, has been a great counsel. As an attorney, a former practicing attorney, I really appreciated her work. It's not only her legal counsel, but her demeanor is just great to work with, and she will be sorely missed.
All the best, and thank you, Allison.
Thank you, Allison. Appreciate your work and your work you've done for the for WMSC, and hope to see you in your new endeavor, in your new job.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you very much, Allison. Congratulations on your new position.
Thank you all.
Everyone. Thank you, everyone. And that completes our business for today. As a reminder, you can always report any concerns through our website, wmsc.gov, through our social media channels like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or by email. We expect to hold our next public meeting on October 26, 2021. At this time, we expect the meeting will again be held remotely via video conference. We look forward to seeing you then. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved, Commissioner Rush. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you for the motion and the second. And now General Counsel Foltz has a chance to conduct her last recorded vote.
I will take it on out. Thank you. Chairman Hart.
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar-Dyke.
Approve.
Commissioner Hull.
Approve.
And Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. And before I gavel, thank you to the members of the public who joined us today, to the commission staff for preparing and conducting today's meeting, and to the commissioners and alternate commissioners who engaged in the process to help ensure the continuous improvement of WMATA. The meeting is hereby adjourned.